Do you have pets, Quinton?
Yeah, we have a dog, although he's not staying with us right now. He's staying with my sister, but he's a really sweet dog. Very, very friendly. I grew up with a lot of animals in Suriname, so I enjoy having animals around. I don't like to keep them in cages, so in Cambridge, I just enjoy them in the wild. We had a rabbit, a little baby rabbit that moved into our backyard last year. And it was so cute because it was really small at first. And then as it got bigger, it had more and more trouble squeezing into our backyard. And so eventually it couldn't visit us anymore. But it would come and take a nap in the strawberry patch during the day. So you could see it like sleeping in between the strawberry leaves. Carved out this nice little patch for itself. But it was just getting to be too big. We have a lot of rabbits in Cambridge, as you may have noticed.
Yeah, in Medford too.
Yeah, they're actually the eastern cottontail, which is an invasive species that's replacing the New England cottontail, apparently, although none of us could tell the difference. But they're really smart. Like one of the things you'll notice, right, is that I've never seen a roadkill rabbit in Cambridge. Have you? I've seen lots of rats, right, and even occasionally squirrel, but never a rabbit. And a couple of years ago, I was outside in the evening talking to State Rep Mike Connolly, and we saw this rabbit on the sidewalk, and it hopped up to the crosswalk. It stopped, waited for the crosswalk to turn to walk, and then it hopped across the road. And we were like, how does it know?
That is cool.
Somehow they know how to cross the street without getting killed.
Yeah, I've read similar things like that. For example, in Moscow, Russia, the street dogs have learned how to navigate the subway. Like they go in like into the underground train station and know which stops to get on and off, and like it's really cool. Like, I mean, I wouldn't know how to navigate the subway.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories about animals doing things like that is these dolphins in Brazil. They developed these techniques for hunting fish where they cooperate with the human fishermen, but the humans don't even know that this is happening because the humans will put out these nets to catch the fish, and then the dolphins will drive the fish towards the net. And then when the fish realize that they're about to get caught in these nets, then they turn around, and then of course the dolphins are right there to swallow them up. And then meanwhile, the fishermen are like, oh wow, there's all these fish in front of our nets. And then they pull up their nets and they can catch a bunch of fish. But what's really cool about it is that they traced this behavior, and they could trace like individual dolphins who knew how to do this. And then those dolphins would move to join a different pod. And then all of a sudden that pod would start doing it too, whereas previously they weren't doing it. So somehow the dolphins are like teaching the other ones, like, hey, let's go over there and, you know, catch some fish with these fishing people. And somehow they're teaching them how to do it. And it's like spreading behavior among all these dolphins, which is pretty amazing. I mean, they clearly have some kind of language, but we haven't been able to decode it yet.
They're trying to communicate with us, but we haven't figured it out.
The dolphins are like, what's wrong with these people? Like talking to them, and they're just ignoring us. Yeah, apparently they did discover that dolphins have names just like we do, but they use them differently. They use them to acknowledge each other. So the dolphins, when they're babies, I guess their mom will come up with a whistle for them. That's their name. And then for their whole life, when they're approaching another pod, they'll basically say their name so that the pod knows who it is. And then the pod will repeat their name back to them to kind of acknowledge them that they've recognized who it is. And each dolphin has a unique name, just like, well, even better than humans, because humans don't even have unique names.
Right.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're really amazing animals.
I grew up around rural areas around Massachusetts. Life has gotten dramatically, increasingly more exciting, easier, just for so many reasons. I'm building a house right now and I'm renting an apartment, and I never want to finish the house because this is amazing. Like, I go to work and there's a farmer's market right outside my house.
Pretty cool. Where's your house that you're building?
It's in Lakeville. Yeah, I'm keeping it in Lakeville this year. Someone was just renting property. In the past, I've always been on a farm every season. And this season, I'm farming in East Boston at Eastie Farm.
Oh yeah,
So there's no place to park it over there.
it's
It's a
awesome.
tiny house on wheels.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's super.
And I tried to build it out of 100% non-toxic materials, but it was hard.
Mm.
So there were a few things in there that aren't non-toxic.
Right. Well, as Kermit the Frog famously said, it's not easy being green. Eastie Farm is one of my favorite places. I've gotten to know Quinton over the years, and he called me up a few years ago and he said, "Can you help us install a rain barrel?" And so I went over there and installed this whole system for them with these rain barrels that feed into each other. So they have like 4 or 5 rain barrels that fill up from the neighbor's roof.
Yeah, I see those rain barrels every day, and I saw City of Cambridge. It's so cool to hear that was your work.
Yeah, no, that was one of the first projects that I started for Green Cambridge, because I installed at the time 4 rain barrels at my house. And I acquired them through the city because the city has a discount program to buy rain barrels. And I realized that a lot of people might, have the best of intentions and buy those rain barrels, but then not complete the installation. And so I offered to the city to help people install rain barrels if they bought them through this program. And now Green Cambridge, we install like 50 rain barrels a year through that program. So I've met a lot of people and installed a lot of rain barrels in Cambridge and even beyond. I went as far as Winthrop, I think, was my furthest customer. But it was a really fun way to engage with people and help them be more sustainable too.
So this rainwater doesn't need to be filtered? Like there's no risk of acid rain or some contaminants in the rain?
Not really. I mean, you shouldn't drink it. I mean, if you're going to drink it, you should boil it. But I just use it for my plants, and if there's any contaminants in the water, the soil will absorb them, and nature will clean it naturally. So yeah, there's really no real problem with the water. But yeah, I was always so surprised that we don't use rainwater in New England because we get so much rain. And, you know, growing up in Suriname, all the houses would have a rainwater tank. And that would be like your main water supply. And then to drink it, we would boil the water, but you know, you could shower in it, you can use it for your toilets and for your, you know, laundry and stuff. And I went to travel to Bermuda a few years ago with my wife, and it's actually required by law. If you build a house in Bermuda, you have to build a rainwater collection system. And all the roofs you can see because they have like this groove that runs diagonal across the roof to collect the water and flow it into the cistern. Because it's just way more cost efficient for everybody to collect rainwater than for them to try to purify, you know, seawater for drinking.
Right. Similar in the way of trying to explain the fellow city council members, like there's non-monetary benefits and there's like short-term benefits. But when we start thinking about down the line, we're preventing huge amounts of financial cost. And through our buildings and through our personal health and healthcare, with the things that we're advocating for by creating green spaces and then redirecting our water in an efficient way.
Absolutely. Have you been to the Hurley Street Farm yet in East Cambridge that we did?
No.
Yeah, that's on private property, but they asked us to make a farm for them, and it's open to the community. I put the link in the chat. But one of the things that we did was we built a 1,000 gallon rainwater collection system there. Just diverting water off the roof of their house.
Okay, I drive by this.
On Hurley Street, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop by here.
Yeah, next time, take a look. We put that in 4 years ago. It was so funny because I was doing the rain barrel installations, and so Heather, who owns the house with her husband, called and asked me to install a rain barrel for them. So I go over there, and they have this really big backyard, but it was just overgrown with weeds. And I was like, you know, I'm happy to install a rain barrel for you, but like, what are you watering here? Because you're just growing all these weeds. And they said, no, we're just going to use the rain barrel for the flowers in the front. But we used to have a tenant farmer from Nicaragua who would grow corn and you know, beans over here. But then he disappeared one day, and we haven't seen him in 2 years. And you know, do you know anybody who would want to farm our property? And I was like, whoa, we gotta find a way to get that done. But of course, I couldn't do it myself, you know, not by myself. And then right around that time, I decided to run for city council and decided to hire someone to run Green Cambridge, you know, as the executive director. And so I did this massive search with my board, you know, and we evaluated like 8 or 9 different candidates and ranked them on 10 different properties. And, you know, each one was like almost, but not quite the right person. And then I just happened to meet Stephen Nutter through a totally unrelated event. And he told me that he's really interested in permaculture and he wants to do urban agriculture. And I was like, Stephen, you have to see this property. And so I took him over there, and his eyes just lit up, and he was like, you know, I want to do this. And so we hired him, and he's been running Green Cambridge ever since. But also he's built out this farm, and you know, now we're in our 4th season now. It actually, yeah, I think it's our 4th season. Might even be our 5th already. And we've it's a communal farm, so anybody can go there and grow and partake of the produce. But then any excess that we have, we donate it to East End House and to the extended day program in Cambridge. And then it was so successful that the city of Cambridge actually asked us to take over one of the community gardens on River Street. And so Green Cambridge is now running that community garden as a communal farm as well. And then the Cambridge City Growers, do you know about them?
Yeah, I know Sage.
Right. So they started up in the port, and they're trying to do the same thing now with the Squirrel Brand community garden, to take those spaces and instead of individual privileged people signing up for plots, to say, hey, let's farm this as a community and all share in the work and in the products of it.
This is so cool. I'm like holding back from keeping this to be like expanding this. So I have a lot to learn, and one thing that I'm really curious of are the hurdles that we have to overcome at implementing these spaces in the future and bringing food into the school systems. I know that there are contracts involved with big corporations. How can we bring food that's grown in cities into our school systems?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with a lot of these systemic barriers, what I try to do is find like where are some of the cracks, that you can sort of pry things open. And what we found is that, the school system is fairly walled off and hard to get in there. But then there's these extended day programs, and there's community schools, and there's the youth centers, and there's the nonprofits like East End House and Food for Free. And so those are places where you can begin to change the practices and bring locally grown food into those systems. And then what you see happening is that eventually the school system will get jealous, right? And they'll say like, hey, we want that too. And then they will actually start asking for
it. Does that same theory apply to grocery stores like Shaw's? Will we ever see the East Boston Shaw's carry Eastie Farm produce, or whatever we pull through in relationships with other farms in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I think so. So there's the new grocery store that just opened up in Central Square, right?
Right.
Sorry, I'm back. Yeah, the Daily Table is a good example, right? Where you see sort of non-traditional grocery stores, not the big chains, that can begin to introduce some of these alternative supply systems, and then eventually, Whole Foods will be like, oh, we got to do this too, they'll start doing it. There's actually an urban agriculture ordinance that we've been working on in the city, but it started like 5-6 years ago, even before I got on the council with Jan Devereaux. And they split it into bees, chickens, and produce. And then they did bees first because there was a lot of interest among residents who wanted to keep bees. And so we actually legalized that. So you can legally have a beehive in Cambridge. We actually have a beehive now at the Hurley Street Farm, actually. But then they were supposed to do chickens next because some people have chickens, but it's not quite legal. And then eventually they're supposed to get to the produce, because right now, like, we can give away the produce we grow at Hurley Street Farm, but we couldn't sell it. But, you know, it just hasn't risen to the top of the priority list. So it's just kind of sitting there, but it's another thing that we have to do eventually in the council, is finalize that ordinance.
So full disclosure, I'm currently in a Master of Science Environmental Policy program at Tufts. And after I graduate, I'm also going to Fletcher. After I graduate, I want to run for city council in Medford. And I was thinking about planning for that in 2023. So I wanted to ask you, when you ran for the first time, was there an opportunity you recognized? Like, was there an opening, like somebody had retired or left their position? Or did you have to beat someone, the incumbent?
Yeah, there was a city councilor, Nadeem Mazen, who was really great and really an inspiration to me, and a good friend. But he decided after 2 terms that he'd had enough and he wasn't going to run for re-election. So we worked very closely together. And, you know, he helped me a lot in terms of winning the election. But, you know, that being said, I don't think that's the only way to get on. You know, certainly last time in 2019 when Jeevan got elected, there was no opening. You know, he just won fair and square, and Craig Kelly lost. You know, so it's certainly not a prerequisite. But you know, I think it is helpful to get connected to some of the local politicians and organizers, and, you know, get a sense of, you know, what's the lay of the land, who's, you know, gaining in popularity, who's losing in popularity, and, you know, what's trending in your town. And, you know, for me, the thing I always say to the voters is, you know, it's your decision, you know, who you want to vote for, right? My job is just to present myself and say, this is what I'm about, this is what I stand for, this is what I want to do if I get elected. And then the rest is up to the voters, you know. So you don't really, at some level, you don't really have to worry about it that much, you know. You just want to present yourself as genuinely and you know, as best as you can, right? So that the voters can understand who you are and what you're about. And then if that's who they want to represent them, then they'll vote for you. And if it's not, then they won't, you know, and that's all there's to it, really.
We fight for a lot of change, and sometimes we win, and then the rug is pulled out from underneath us anyways because of disasters that come our way. I'm talking budget. I'm thinking like the Student Opportunity Act that would have supported our public school system, and we would have given democratic control to choose to even employ electric buses if they wanted to. I'm curious what your thoughts are when you see the economy kind of dictate our change just as much as politicians do. What your thoughts are on Raise Up Massachusetts and their Fair Share Amendment campaign to alleviate some of this with progressive tax revenue.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of Raise Up Mass. You know, I've been a big supporter of the fight for a minimum wage. I'm a big supporter of a guaranteed income. You know, I think we have to start looking outside the traditional capitalist market-based systems, you know, because we know they don't work, right? I mean, If they worked, we wouldn't be fighting climate change. So, you know, I try not to, I don't expect the market to do what we want, right? And so part of being a legislator is to force that issue. And again, the only way that we can ultimately do that is with the people behind us. And so a lot of it really is education and helping people understand that, you know, the way capitalism works, it's like a prisoner's dilemma, right? And, you know, I win, you lose. And at the end of the day, that means we both lose, right? Because it always comes back around. And so what you really want to do is try to bend the system towards win-win, right? Where I win and you win and we all win, right? And that means that we have to trust each other, right? I mean, capitalism is really based on mistrust, right? It's like, I need to save up lots of money because, you know, when I retire, nobody's going to care about me. So I have to take care of myself, you know, or if I can't make the rent, you know, my landlord's going to throw me out. So I got to work really hard and, you know, save up money so I can buy a house and then I don't have to worry about a landlord. You know? So it's all based on not trusting each other. And what we really have to do is find ways to build systems where we depend on each other, where we're doing mutual aid, mutual support. And now we don't have to be competing and you know, fighting each other, right? Instead, we're helping each other, we're supporting each other, and ultimately creating a much healthier society that way. But you know, our thinking is so corrupted that people don't see that, right? And so when, you know, like when I advocate for the basic income and people are like, oh, what, you can't just give people money. And I'm like, well, guess what? You know, for the first 18 years of your life, somebody just gave you stuff. Like, you know, you didn't work for that, you know. And the only reason you're not poor is because somebody gave you money. So it's really, you know, about changing that mindset and helping people see like, oh yeah, you know, we're actually all dependent on each other anyway. So we might as well fix the system so that it's, you know, real about that.